Welcome to episode 299 of the weekly session. I'm Mark Little. I'm your host. As we've been mentioning the last couple of weeks, we're announcing a big change to the format of this weekly session. And so you will want to attend next week. The episode 300 is when we're making the big announcements about the improvements to the weekly session. So believe it or not, that's coming up next week. And next week will be at a different time. So make a note. It's been on the home page of the toolkit for quite some time. I'm sure you've picked it up. But next week, the weekly session will be, that's Thursday, August 3rd, 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. East Coast. And then in Australia, this is 8 a.m. for Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, and 6 a.m. in Perth. So we will look forward to seeing you next week on episode 300 to unveil all the big announcements. And basically, the improvements are things that have been suggested by administrative managers all over the world. So we are simply implementing ideas that have been suggested to us by our members. So the issues for today had a number of questions that we'll deal with. And as always, with every webinar, the best use of a live get-together between you and me is for us to go live and ask whatever questions you've got. So again, at the request of administrative managers, we will not do that at the beginning of the webinar. Today, we will do that at the end. So get your thoughts together. What questions do you have? The very last thing that we will do before we part company today is to pause and go live. And just I'll go quiet and see. You can raise your hand or you can type in your question, whichever you prefer. But I think we can all admit the one thing that only we can do on live events is interactions like that. So we'll always take advantage of that. All right, first question: having lunch with an ideal client. I think what they meant to say is I'm having lunch with an ideal client. What's the agenda that you've used in the past? So I'm doing a little bit of an assumption here, but I think what the advisor is referring to here is the client lunch program that we've walked through in the past. I'll give you a thumbnail sketch of it here in a minute. But just to answer the question up front, there is no agenda. That's the whole point. This is a social event. So let me just kind of unveil the theory here, or the philosophy, because we took a long time developing this process, and it really works great, and we've tested it for years. So what you're really referring to, I believe, is this question that came up in episode 191. So I'll put the link to this episode on the replay page for this session, but it's episode 191. And on the player, you'll notice it says informal client luncheons. And the question itself says, so to answer your question, yeah, it's kind of, let's get in the spirit of the question that I was responding to from an advisor. The question was, something I remember you mentioned in the past was how when you were an advisor, which I'm still an advisor, by the way, still have a handful of clients, you would regularly have lunch with your clients during the week. More on that in a minute. I'm interested in starting to do this myself, and I was wondering if you could give me any feedback or tips on how to do this effectively, since it seems like you had quite a bit of experience with it. My thought behind wanting to do this is that I believe it will help deepen and strengthen my relationships with my clients outside of simply the office setting. As a byproduct, make me more referable. Any feedback or suggestion you might have for me would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so we all have our own motives for doing this. Yes, I can tell you that an outcome of these luncheons is you will become more referable. But you can have any of a number of motives. My personal motive was I noticed that clients liked to bring up long stories in the client progress meetings, and that was inappropriate because I had an agenda and we were trying to plow through the agenda that would help them actualize their comprehensive written lifetime financial strategy. So they'd shared with us all these objectives that they wanted to accomplish in their life, financial objectives, and we had a full agenda for every meeting, and we just didn't have time for long stories about the trip to Europe with the grandkids or the fishing trip with the family reunion or whatever it was. And so, but I felt that clients, what they were trying to do by having these long conversations during the client progress meetings was to develop a better relationship with me. I thought, the only reason they're doing this is because they want to get to know me better, and not just on a business level, on a human level, on a personal level. They've handed over all their financial affairs to me. I'm coordinating all their money. This is a position of tremendous trust, and they are trying to trust me more and more. And so they just simply, I'm kind of thinking maybe, reading a little too much into it. But for me, I felt like this was a client just trying to get to know me and trust me even more. So they tell a story about their, something that they've been doing since the last time we had a meeting. And then the reciprocal would be, then I would tell a story about something I've done with my daughter or something since the last 4 months. So I thought this is not the appropriate venue for this. I thought, if we're going to do this, and I totally get, and accept and acknowledge the legitimacy of getting to know each other better, let's do it on a different venue. Let's schedule lunch sometime. So that was the birth of the informal client lunch program. All right, so with me, everything ends up being a process. But keep in mind, I had 91 ideal clients at that time. So it had to be a process if I was going to do this consistently with all my clients. So it was an informal lunch program. So these were informal client luncheons, therefore no agenda, no business agenda at least. And the way it worked was this. So I scheduled client lunches with every client 16 weeks apart. So this is once every 4 months, just like the client progress meetings. So client progress meetings are 16 weeks apart. And so that's basically just the 3-meeting process. You're meeting with clients every 4 months. Client progress meetings are 16 weeks apart. And then I would schedule client luncheons exactly in between. So the client luncheons would be 16 weeks apart. Now, let me pause just a moment and say this was not compulsory. It is just a nice, friendly, informal lunch. So my administrative manager would contact the client, about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, say, hey, Mark, would love to grab lunch with you all. And that was really as complex as it was. And it was not compulsory, so it's permission-based. So if the client's busy or if we couldn't put it together, then we just skipped it. It was not that big a deal. But if mostly, and this did happen more than half the time, we would go ahead and have lunch. I tended to invite 2 client couples. So unless the clients that I was meeting with, there were times when I had clients that I knew had big issues going on in their life. Either there was some huge financial thing, like they're selling a business or putting in their retirement papers at their corporation, or maybe one of the 2 spouses had a grave illness or something. So I would schedule just a one-on-one luncheon in those cases. But otherwise, I thought, hey, this is a great opportunity. I have a client community. Let's start treating it like a community. Let me start introducing some of these couples. So I would hand select a couple of couples and that I thought might get along pretty well together. We had client events also 3 times a year. So the client community did get together in those venues as well. But these are smaller, just quiet luncheons, a couple of couples, and, very informal and optional. So had these luncheons every 16 weeks. And what that really meant was that I'm interacting with the client every couple of months. So every 8 weeks I'm meeting. We're either having lunch or we're having a meeting. That's, in the client's mind, that's a relationship. so so kind of back to the question at hand. Your question is, what's the agenda? For me, it was well, for the person asking the question originally, it was their thought this would deepen the relationship, and that's true. For me, it was exhausting topics that would be distracting in a client progress meeting. So, hey, if we're going to talk about the fishing trip or the trip to Europe or the fact that you're putting the brand new jacuzzi on the back deck that you're building at your mansion, let's talk about those things in a venue other than in the client progress meeting when we're trying to get business accomplished. So it exhausts all those other topics. But it also, having done this for years, a few things did occur to me. This is really what's happening that you need to be prepared for is this is an active listening exercise on your part. So it is an informal social luncheon, but things will come up that might be issues relevant to their financial strategy, either opportunities or maybe risks. And as a matter of fact, I would say that quite often clients would say something that I picked up on as potential risks facing my client. And I'm talking about financial risks. So things that maybe something's going on in their family, or maybe one of their adult children lost their job, and so they're going to need to help them financially, or whatever the case. I did pick up on those. Now, I did not stop and make it a business meeting at that point. I just let it go. But I made a mental note and I wrote it down, and that became a part of the interaction log after this client luncheon. So make a note there. You do create this is an interaction with the client, so therefore you need to create an interaction log, and that gets distributed to all the subject matter experts after the luncheon. So I make note of any risks or any opportunities or issues that are relevant to the financial strategy. But also, it's an active listening exercise during these luncheons, listening for ways to exceed the client's expectations. So, the individual who originally asked this question back in episode 191 talked about becoming more referable. Well, the way that happens is you're actively listening for clues of their financial lifestyle, ways they spend money. Maybe they're talking about something something expensive they're about to purchase, and you're thinking in your head, can I get ahead of this? Can I help them? Not for topic of conversation in the luncheon. Again, it's just an informal social luncheon, but you're thinking in your head, I'm looking for clues of things that they're saying about themselves, about their financial life. It's always a question for you and your team. What more can we be doing for these clients that would pleasantly surprise them, that would exceed their expectations, and would create, in essence, a remarkable event, something that we do for them that they will then turn around and talk up to people in their lives that they care about. See, that's the whole point of the referability process. The process in the toolkit at the end of the day is to continue to work as a team, you and your team, to figure out ways that you can create deliverables or services or do valuable things in a client's life that is, remarkable enough that they are going to be inspired and motivated to talk it up with other people that they know. As in, they're sitting down with a friend of theirs and they're saying, you're not going to believe what my financial advisor just did for me. And it just creates an anecdotal experience that they just naturally would share with people in their lives. So these are things that you can pick up for, listen for clues in these luncheons. And I probably got most of my ideas from the clients themselves in venues like these luncheons. It's hard to say. Maybe half of the ideas I got in these luncheons from the clients, and the other half of the ideas I got was brainstorming with my subject matter experts who came up with some quite creative things that we could be doing to help the client because we know their financial life so well. But anyway, those are the motivations. But a couple things I feel that I have to say, you do still have to prepare in advance for these luncheons, at least a quick review. And mainly, what I would do is look at any activity that has occurred since the last client progress meeting. So there is no business agenda, but be prepared. If the client brings up a business matter, you're not going to say, hey, we're not here to talk about that. You're not going to shut them down. You better be the expert every time you interact with any client. That's part of the extraordinary client experiences. It's all about them. If they want to talk about some financial issue, well, you're at lunch. If they want to bring it up in front of another couple, as long as I think it's appropriate to talk about, then it's fair game. And you better be prepared. So I look at all activity since the last client progress meeting. Specifically, what I look at is I read through all the interaction logs since the last meeting with the client. I read all the CRM notes, and that's client relationship management software. So I'm sure most of you have a CRM system where you're putting in notes of things that, this is literally just file notes. So in the old days, we'd write notes in the file. Now you have a CRM where when the client asks for a distribution, or if a client changes a beneficiary, or if a client, I don't know, anything the team does or anything the client does, there is a running note in the file in the CRM and all I'm saying is I do a date search since the last client progress meeting, and I just read whatever the notes are in the file since the last meeting. I just want to know what's going on or refresh my memory. I do review the client prep packet from the last client meeting, especially the 5 critical reports. I refresh my memory about things like the circle chart and the legacy flow, and I definitely look at the GPS to see what the recommendations are that are supposed to be getting done. The numbers history is something I do want to kind of get a sense of, whether their assets or values are going up and down and their cash reserves and so forth. I do review the goal blueprints just to refresh my memory, make sure every goal is on track. And if you're doing anything, I guess if the one thing that came to mind is there an agenda? If there's an agenda, it's the MISC organizer. And if you're not sure what that is, just search for it on the toolkit. I'll put a link in the replay for this session so that you can just click and look at the MISC organizer. But in essence, it's just a document where you're tracking all the personal details of a client's life. And, where they went to college, what are the names of their siblings, if they have grandchildren, and if they have children and grandchildren, what are the names of all and ages of all those people? What cocktails do they drink? Literally everything about their personal life is in the MISC organizer. And I do look at that before as I'm reviewing all these other things, I do look at that to see what's missing. So let's say I've never asked them where they went to school. So I just note that that's missing on the MISC organizer, and I might bring that up in the luncheon. So the whole point of the luncheon is there's no agenda. It's just a nice, pleasant social luncheon. There's no planned business agenda, and I say no planned business agenda. They can certainly bring up topics if they like. Just remember, it's all about them. So ask them questions about them. Don't dominate the luncheon with stories about you. So it's okay to say, so I know you went to Europe with the grandchildren. How'd that go? Tell me about the highlights of that trip. As opposed to if you went to Europe with the family, don't dominate the luncheon with stories about your trip to Europe. It's not about you, it's about them. So it will be a more pleasant experience for them if you ask about them. Now, that's not to say they might not ask you about you. My clients know I have a daughter, and very often they'll ask me about her and what she's doing and how's she doing in college and all that sort of thing. So I'm not saying don't answer the question. Just keep it short. And at the end, flip it around, ask about them. So just to give you a few example conversation openers. So how are the kids doing? What are their lives all about right now? Or how about a couple? Just say, I've never asked you this. How did you all meet? There must be a story there. Or I've never asked you where you went to school. Where did you go to high school? and other questions, like as the relationship deepens, like now you're in the second or third year of these luncheons, so you've covered all the basics with them. It's always great to think of unusual questions like, what's your first memory of money? Or when you were a kid, did your family talk about money issues, say around the dinner table and things like that? I love to learn about my clients' financial origins, like how did they handle money when they were a kid and things like that. These are always fun conversations. Sometimes not. I have had situations where a client says, well, we were homeless for a little period of time when I was a child, and my mother was an alcoholic and my father was, and those are rough. But I'm telling you, this is all part of getting to know people, getting to know about them and their lives. And as the person who asked the question originally, it's all about deepening the relationship. So this is the point of the luncheon. I hope this helps. I have this question from an administrative manager. The annual referral rate has not increased for us in 6 months. Is that normal? And how often should we expect it to increase? Something just occurred to me. I'm going to go live to the toolkit in a minute because there's something that occurred to me to answer this question, but I'll get to that in a minute. The answer to the question is, think in terms of the client meeting cycle. So those of you that have been using the toolkit, you know that a client meeting cycle is talking about the 3-meeting process. So here's the tracking of the annual referral rate, but just to think about the client meeting cycle, just to make the point, you're meeting with every client every 4 months. So you're meeting with a client, theoretically you're meeting with a quarter of your clients 1 month and a quarter of your ideal clients the next month and a quarter of your ideal clients the next month and then a quarter of your clients the 4th month. So that's a client meeting cycle. So the answer to your question is the goal is to see an increase in the annual referral rate every 4 months. That's a client meeting cycle. Since the client meeting cycle is 4 months, that means you meet with every single ideal client once every 4 months. So your team is working with you and your team is collaborating with each other. They're trying to brainstorm and come up with ideas to exceed the client's expectations so that we know that they're impressed. And the best and most direct and most important metric of measuring whether or not you're impressing your clients or not is the annual referral rate. So all your team's efforts to exceed your client's expectations are going to be known after every client meeting cycle. That is to say, after 4 months, when you've met with every ideal client, whatever you're experimenting with right now to try to exceed your client's expectations, those efforts are they either increased the annual referral rate or it didn't increase after 4 months. And so if it did, that's great. You try other things. If it didn't, that's great. Don't beat yourself up. Just move on. You'll have to try other things. Either way, whether it goes up or down, you've got to keep trying other things until your annual referral rate exceeds 2.0. So each month, just as a reminder, you have to calculate the number. So the number is the number of referrals provided by just your ideal clients over the last 12 months divided by the number of ideal clients you have. So the goal is, and your team should not stop, their efforts to increase that number until that number consistently exceeds over 2.0. Now, it really should be far above 2.0. But the way that we came up with 2.0 is we've never seen any member of the toolkit achieve the guaranteed outcome of the toolkit without the annual referral rate being at least 2.0, okay, on average, like never goes below 2.0. But with most members of the toolkit, it had to be much higher than that, but the goal, we have to have a goal to begin with. The goal is to get it over 2.0 and never drop below 2.0 ever. And so since it's a 12-month look back for referrals, this means every 12 months you're getting on average 2 referrals for every 1 ideal client on average. So we all know that some clients refer far more than others, and some clients barely refer at all. But on average, you need it to be above 2.0 to meet the goal of the toolkit. And that is so that you have at least 1 initial client interview every day, Monday through Friday, generated from unsolicited client referrals. So you're tracking the number each month. That's the number. That's the number of referrals from your ideal clients divided by the ideal clients, and you carry it out 3 decimal points. So that's the number. But you also chart it. You chart it each and every month. You submit it to your team, and you put it on a graph and chart it, because you circulate this to your team, because it's really the trend that matters. That's what your team needs to see, is whether the trend is up or down or flat. Now, you're saying it's flat. I'm telling you that it should go up every 4 months. That's a client meeting cycle. That's when you know, because you've seen every ideal client, whatever you're trying, as far as exceeding client expectations, after 4 months, you know whether it worked or not. But I said I thought of something there for a moment that hadn't occurred to me before when I was preparing for this today. What you're looking at is the homepage for the Trusted Advisor Toolkit. I'll put a link to this in the replay page for this session, but there is a page called Norm Levine or Norman Levine, and I share this quite often. This is the page where, if you go through this page, it is a recording of Norman Levine, who spoke at a live event that we did back in 2010. He's a friend and a co-author of Bill Bachrach's, although he's since deceased. But he described more or less how I built my business in a way I had never heard anybody describe it before. And he was just a veteran of the industry, and I encourage everyone to listen to these recordings. But that's not the point of why I'm bringing you here. On this page, this is the only place on the toolkit where I literally walk through. It says Mark McKenna Little's comments. I walk you through my numbers. So on this page with Norm Levine are my numbers, like how many people did I meet on an average week, how many initial client interviews did I conduct on average, and how much client acquisition time did I spend, how many hours, and how did I break it down. This pull out right here, this pull section, pull quote, has literally all the metrics and all the numbers that are interesting to most advisors to see my actual numbers. But the reason I'm bringing you here is right here on this little sidebar, there's kind of a history of my annual referral rate. And I laughed because on January 1st of the year 2000, my annual referral rate was 0.374. So we talk about how the goal is 2.0. And I can tell the reason I laughed is because for almost a year, it should go up every client meeting cycle, every 4 months. That's the goal. But I just wanted to show you that, just to prove that, I'm a mere mortal just like anybody else. There's nothing amazing about me or my story. It started at 0.374 on January 1st of 2000. That's when I started this whole project to, create truly comprehensive financial services. And it stayed that way for almost a year. It was a real frustrating situation, just like you're dealing with right now. Your annual referral rate has not gone up in over 6 months. Well, mine didn't go up for almost a year. So that was the beginning. All that tells you is at the beginning, it takes quite a bit of work. I think more work than these skilled subject matter experts realize to actually impress a client. And I just talked to this week the administrative manager to one of the most impressive offices that we're working with right now. And she's frustrated for the same reason. Her annual referral, they have a big operation and lots of non-ideal clients, and they're bringing in millions of dollars of revenue each year from ideal and non-ideal clients. So they've got this big operation going, and they get a lot of referrals. But when I ask them to start tracking it the way the toolkit says, so in addition to tracking all your referrals across all your non-ideal clients and everything, just track this one also. Track the annual referral rate, which is just from ideal clients. They were stunned that they get a very low rate of referrals from ideal clients, which was particularly, I think the advisor in that office, the trusted advisor, was literally stunned to see that number, to realize that, these ideal clients are the clients that we spend most of our time trying to impress. We spend most of our resources at the firm serving them, and to think that is, of all the clients at that firm, these are the clients that are referring the least, that's very frustrating. But all it says is it's normal. These are the clients who have the highest expectations. They've got a lot of money. They're typically multimillionaires, and they are paying a large fee for working with you, and they expect a lot. And so even though it's frustrating, it's still your job. It's still your job to crack that code. It's still your job to keep working, keep trying. Don't get dispirited, to keep attempting new ideas and experimenting with new things. It really takes a lot of effort for the team to collaborate with each other to come up with these ideas, and eventually it will pay off. Eventually you'll start to see the annual referral rate go up, and by October 22nd of 2002, which is when I closed my firm to new business, that's 34 months later, our team had moved the annual referral rate from 0.374 up to 12.343. So that just proves that just keep after it. I mean, I can tell you in our industry, just kind of stepping back for a moment and thinking, just thinking about the industry and my experience in working with financial advisors and team members across the globe. In my experience, passion, and that is to say people that are highly skilled, who know what they're doing, highly experienced, very experienced, passion in financial services industry is actually common. I mean, we talk a lot about you have to be passionate about what you do. You have to be passionate about serving clients. That's true. But I'm telling you, passion is common. Endurance is rare. What's really rare in our industry is endurance. It's identifying an issue like this, that my annual referral rate is 0.374, which is frustrating. And then looking back on it, I remember these meetings, how frustrated my team was. They said they kept trying to talk me out of it and saying, "Don't worry about it. We're doing plenty for them. They're happy. We're never going to see this annual referral rate go up. So let's just give it up. I mean, we're doing plenty for them." My team was whispering in my ear, "Don't worry about it." And I knew, because I had looked at the data, that referrals are the best and most direct metric to determine whether clients are satisfied or not. And we just kept after it, and I'm just showing you the payoff. The payoff was an annual referral rate that never went below 12. Our highest annual referral rate was 15 something. I'd have to look it up. We you're updating it every month. So we did have an annual referral rate somewhere along the line that was 15 point something. And then, something dropped off, and we had some client that gave us a lot of referrals. It's a rolling number. So every month some drop off. And so at the end of the day, when we stopped accepting new clients, it was 12.343. And how do I know it never went below 3? Because the key is we kept calculating the number even though I was not accepting clients. We still used the annual referral rate as the most reliable client service metric in our firm long after I wasn't accepting new clients, because we knew that was the best way to determine and establish whether we're exceeding our clients' expectations or not. So chart the number, chart the trend every single month. So I'm going to go through the results of the Trusted Advisor survey. I went through them last week, but we have had quite a few additional trusted advisors respond to this, and I'm going to show you this survey to show you why we are making some of these changes, both in the weekly session and in the monthly advisor session, which I'll describe that to the advisors on the next monthly advisor session. But I'm just tap dancing here for another minute or two because I want you to I want you to be thinking. So sit here and think what your questions are, because in a minute I'm going to go quiet and just say, what questions do you have? And then we're going to go live and see what questions you have right now. But before I do that, let me just walk through the results of the survey, because these numbers have changed a bit. So this is to trusted advisors. It has been suggested that we offer shorter but perhaps more frequent webinars for trusted advisors. What do you prefer? Slam dunk. 92% of advisors like the idea of shorter, more frequent webinars than we're currently doing for them. In the future, the monthly advisor session will not present any content anymore. The content will be provided in advance, and the webinars will respond live to your questions and provide you direct coaching live on the spot, like we're about to do here in a minute with you. So you'll probably attend webinars only if you have some questions or want one-on-one coaching about the toolkit or about your business. How will this change your likelihood of attending webinars live? Well, 25% said it won't make any difference whatsoever, and 50% said they would attend more frequently. So that validates, the improvements that we're about to make. Where 75% of advisors will either attend more frequently or they won't change. It won't change their habit at all. And then we did ask advisors, just on a scale of 1 to 5, to let us know. The question is this one: my live attendance at the monthly advisor session in the past has been, and they just click a star 1 through 5. So perfect attendance, 5 stars. Only 8% of advisors think they have perfect attendance, and 17% have near perfect attendance. That's 4-star. And that's consistent with, that's 25%. That's consistent with what we see behind the scenes with how many people just in general on the Toolkit members attend live events versus just watching the recording later. So this is saying only 25% rank their attendance as perfect or near perfect. Our data shows behind the scenes that about 2/3 of our members watch these webinars by recording. So we track that, and about 2/3 of we only are talking about, some members don't watch them at all, don't participate in the webinars whatsoever. We're not talking about them. Of the members who either attend live or watch the recording, 2/3 watch the recording and 1/3 attend live. So it's just more convenient. So that validates the idea that, if at all possible, we should just create videos and put them on the Toolkit and let you make sure they're there, like new training, new video, new courses, new modules, anything new, rather than doing it as a webinar. Let's just create a video, put it up on the Toolkit, let it's there, because 2/3 of our members anyway would prefer to just watch the videos in their own convenience anyway. And the average is 2.42. I don't know what that tells us. But this was the control question. This was the only question in the survey that was actually required to be answered, because we needed to know the answer to this to make a decision on what we were going to do with the advisor-only webinars. Currently, we schedule the monthly advisor session on a static schedule. 1 webinar a month, specifically only for trusted advisors. Do you like the idea of registering for a monthly advisor webinar on a static schedule, or Do you prefer the idea of being able to register for specific webinars only when the topic is of interest to you? We would let you know the topics well in advance and let you choose. 83% said I like the idea of being able to select which webinar topics I'm interested in. Only 17% said I like it the way it is now, one webinar a month, regardless of topic. So I think that's that's clear evidence to me that the majority of the trusted advisors want shorter, more frequent webinars that are not on a static schedule. It's only when we have new content, and basically just let the advisors know well in advance what the topics are so that they can choose whether they want to attend live or not. Because whenever we do have a live event, we're going to put out the content in advance, and then we're just going to have the webinar to open it up and say, so what questions do you have? And then just deal with live one-on-one coaching, which is, that's what we can do live that we can't do any other way. So what questions do you have right now? We've come to the point in our time together where you get to type in your questions or raise your hand and go live. So if you've had a vacancy, a subject matter expert vacancy on your team for more than 60 days, what's the obstacle? Let's go live now and talk about it, or type in your question. Tell me why. Tell me what the reason is that you've had a vacancy for more than 60 days, and let's talk it through. Or, as the earlier question was alluding to, if your annual referral rate is not increasing, what has your team been trying? Let's talk. I think one of the reasons our annual referral rate was flat for almost a year is because we weren't trying the right things. And I think for some of that time, my team, my subject matter experts, weren't taking it seriously. So we've learned a lot since then. That was back in the year 2000 that we figured all this out. So let's talk about you. Enough about me. Let's talk about you. I'm going to go quiet now. Let's do some live coaching. So right now, either raise your hand or type in your question, and we'll just see how we can help you right now. Okay, we have one question. It was typed in. You touched base on the 15 steps to improve the client experience. Where can I find this? Oh, 15 steps. I had to think for a minute what you're talking about. Okay, I totally get it. These are the initial team exercises for improving the client experience. I think this is what we're talking about here. And if you click the help link, you go to the where that is in the knowledge base. So you click on the knowledge base, and then it's right here. It's improving the client experience, the initial team exercises. There are 4 exercises, exercise 1, 2, 3, 4, and all the action items, if you embedded, like if you click on exercise 1, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, there are 15 steps across this whole thing. I mean, it looks like a ton that's here. It looks as though, just first glance, that there's an introduction, there's 4 exercises, there's 15 steps total in this section, and it just seems like there's a ton here. But the reality is, if you sat down and read this whole section from the introduction to the last step 15, which is at the end of exercise 4, if you sat down and read the whole thing, the feedback I'm getting is it'll take you about 30 minutes. So it's about 30 minutes to sit down and go through the whole thing so that you understand what to do as far as getting your team started. These are the initial team exercises to begin the project of increasing your annual referral rate. Okay, I'll stay quiet here for another minute and see what other questions you have. Just either raise your hand or type in your question. Okay. Well, we've been doing this for the last, I think, 3 episodes where I go quiet and we use this live event for the best use of a live event, which is to interact directly between us. And I think you would agree it's been pretty quiet out there. And the only reason I've been doing this is to demonstrate with you in a practical example so you can see for yourself that if I do this every single week like we're doing it right now, it's almost like putting you on the spot. So it doesn't seem to be working. Now, the fact that you're not submitting a lot of questions right now, there's plenty of you on the session. So right now live with us together, there's quite a few of you. Okay, so another question came in. But the point I'm making right now is, am I to assume, because we're not getting a ton of questions, that there are no vacancies on any of your subject matter expert teams, that there have been no vacancies for more than 60 days? Can I assume that your annual referral rates are all going up consistently every 4 months? No, I don't think so. In fact, I know that's not true. So there's something about the format that needs addressing. And so that's why next week, on the weekly session, episode 300, we're going to unveil a new format to fix this. Okay, so this question did come in over the transom, and then we'll wrap up for today. If you do have any more questions, continue to type them in or raise your hand, and we'll get to you in a minute. But as an interim subject matter expert, I have a question regarding getting our ideal clients to provide their bank statements, such as 3 months, for me to review and compare with their completed personal income and expense sheet. I do get some objection as they feel they have this under control and don't see the value in me doing this. They reluctantly provide the material requested, but I know they hesitate doing this. Now, this business is in Canada, so it continues. In Canada, the banks do not allow for me to obtain this information on the client's behalf. I would love to take this off their plate, but unfortunately cannot. Any suggestions on what I can say to the ideal clients? Well, I've responded to this before with different businesses. I mean, this has come up on the weekly session in other ways. My standard response is, I think this is a conversation between the advisor and the client. Okay, so you as a subject matter expert, you're dealing with it, and that's appropriate. So you're requesting the information you need. You've worked it out with the advisor, so I'm assuming contacting the client directly, and the client has a little pushback on, why are we doing this? Part of it is, you're putting another task on their plate, which is not what we're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to have less to-do items on their list of to-dos because we're in their life, not more. And now here you are adding a to-do item to their list. And the way that you're presenting it is you're saying, yeah, but that's the only way we can do it and where we are. So I'm going to reserve judgment on whether there nevertheless is an easier way to do this so that it either doesn't involve the client or it's not an inconvenience for the client. But even that's not the real issue. If the client doesn't see the value, I'll leave it to you to interact with the client to determine if that's true. They truly don't see the value of a professional subject matter expert reviewing their, bank statements and expenses for whatever jumps off the page. I mean, you could find errors on there. You could find fraud. You could find patterns of spending that they don't notice. You could project their expenses. You could come up with a way for them to fund their goals on a more accelerated manner. I mean, the potential is tremendous for a subject matter expert who's skilled to do what you're doing. So I think if you've given it your best shot, in trying to explain to the client the value of this. I'm with you. I think we've got to work out something so you still are able to see what you need to see. So, if you can't get the credentials to jump online and get this information online, then I'm just going to say let's figure out the easiest way, even if it involves the client still providing it to you each and every month. But that being said, I think if you've given it your best shot, it is the advisor who needs to have the conversation with the client and let them see the value of having a professional do this on a regular basis. The one thought that comes through for me is, what you're describing is kind of back in the old days. I remember like 20 years ago, we had to ask the clients to do this. Slowly, the laws changed so that we could be listed as, an additional party to receive duplicate statements directly from the bank. So that was for us the first, regulatory improvement that allowed us to take this off the client's plate. But then eventually we were, when online became a reality, then, we had the client sign a limited power of attorney, which we drafted, just, hold harmless, letting them know we're not going to do anything in there, but we need your username and password just so we can go in and look at things. So that really freed up the client. But before that, I always think, in a situation like this, what did we do before that, and was it a hassle for the client? And I'm thinking back to the way we used to do it is we didn't do it monthly. We did it, and I think maybe that's what you're saying, that you're doing it quarterly. Like if 3 months is 2 months much, then do it every 4 months. I'm trying to, in my mind, figure out if it's a hassle for the client. What's the benefit of doing it quarterly when you could just put it on the list of homework of things for them to bring into the meeting, and then it's not you, it's the advisor saying, hey, we need this as a part of the work we do. And it's delayed an additional month, but it's a thing every 4 months for them, so they don't have to do something extra. They just have something to print off the computer or whatever and bring into the meeting every 4 months to the regular client progress meeting. But even all that, assuming that the clients, that it's really not the task itself, it's the other thing that they say where hey, we have this under control. That's really the advisor having an accountability conversation with the client, saying, hey, that's not a financial delegator behavior. We have it under control. A financial delegator is not someone who would say, hey, you don't have to do this. I've got it under my control. I've got it handled. That's not financial delegator behavior. And I happen to know in your office, because I just reviewed it with him, you've updated your client, your ideal client profile, and it is now, and it always has been on there, that you only work with ideal clients that are financial delegators. And for me, whenever I had these conversations with a client in the client progress meeting, I literally just pulled out the ideal client profile, sat it in front of the client and say, I'm a little concerned because we only work with financial delegators, mainly because financial delegators want us handling their financial affairs. And so when you say things like, you don't need to do this for me because I am doing it myself, I have this under control, that right there is not financial delegator behavior. Now, the agreement is I'll coach you through this. If you want me to, I'll talk. We can say, let's do a little session where I'm explaining to you the value of why we do this. But that should be, let's all agree that on this issue and every other issue, if there's something we could do for you that means that it's out of your control and we can do it for you, then we're going to be pushing and always attempting to do that. And that's financial delegator. So I think that's definitely a conversation with the client, with the advisor, not between you and the client, but between the advisor and the client at this point. Very good. Well, let's call it a day. Just a couple of reminders before we part company. The Ask Mark Worldwide live session, which is the session where, we are making ourselves available to our brothers and sisters in Australia, because our normal weekly session is in the middle of the night for them. So once a month, we have the Ask Mark Worldwide session. The next one will be on Monday, August 28th. I'll go live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, so it is feasible for North America, and we do have North Americans show up on this session. If you're in Australia, that'll be Tuesday, August 29th. It's already the next day. It's 8 a.m. in Perth and 10 a.m. in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. So go to the homepage of the toolkit to find the meeting link for this and the passcode to get into the meeting. And parting shot, as you know, as administrative managers know, there are 11 steps for implementing the toolkit, and you have a daily responsibility and a monthly responsibility to inform your trusted advisor about your progress with these 11 steps. The daily responsibility is whenever you have your status update check-in meeting several times a week with the advisor, you open every single one of those meetings just like this. We're currently on whatever step you're on, you tell them. You tell them how long you've been on that step, for how many weeks, and you set your target date for achieving the next step so they know roughly, when we will see some progress. So those are the three things you mention on every time you talk to your advisor, as well as your status. So your status is either on track or off track. You're on track if you've been on the current step for less than 60 days. You're off track if you've been on the current step for more than 60 days. So the monthly responsibility is to create this report that you see right here. It's the Toolkit Progress Update Report. It's it's a document that you submit to your advisor and the entire team once a month. And we do have a link, step-by-step instructions on how to create this report. It takes about 20 minutes to create this report once a month. So we have the link and the step-by-step process for creating that. And we do love it when you contact us with questions, especially on how to fill vacancies for your subject matter experts in less than 60 days, and then also increasing your annual referral rate. But any question, we encourage you to contact us. There's a link you'll find on every page of the Trusted Advisor Toolkit. And then finally, the Toolkit Inner Circle, you do have to reapply each and every quarter. The next deadline is September 30th, but if you have all 10 criteria in place right now, just look for the help link. You'll find the Toolkit Inner Circle section, and that's where you submit your certification. Well, that's it for episode 299. Big things are coming, so be sure and join us next week for episode 300.